I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello and welcome to the Cultworthy Cinema Podcast. I'm your host, Antonio. Joining me in studio today, longtime guest, longtime friend, longtime asshole, my friend, Stephen Hayes.
Wow.
Stephen, welcome back to the show.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So this conversation sparked from something that we talked about the other day is we were watching a movie and we were talking about, hey, remember how after this movie came out, all of a sudden we saw an uptick in people doing this shit in real life, like a pop culture trend began out of a movie.
Like a trend. Okay, yeah, right. I remember this.
One of the things that we talked about was like The Matrix. All of a sudden, you know, black leather was back in style until Columbine happened. Trench coats were back in.
Weren't those the same year?
They were the same year, so it had a very short lifespan.
Okay.
Goths were pissed.
Gotcha.
And we've seen a lot of other things like that. So we decided to pull up a list that I found. There are quite a few, but this one is off the Chive, which I was surprised still exists because
I didn't know that.
After like my late 20s, I gave a shit about the Chive. It's still out there, so douchebaggery still persists. But it was exactly what I was looking for in the terms of they had a list of trends that movies started. So then we kind of started this debate of, well, how good are we at our job? Do we know what the trend was from the film, or can we guess the film from the trend?
Right.
I'm leaning one particular version of, I think that we should talk about the film and how the trend started from it, or what the trend was, but you seem to have a different opinion.
No, I think you should tell me what the trend is, and I should try to figure out what movie it applies to. But I don't care. Like, it's your show.
Well, I think maybe we can do a little mix of both, because some are very, very obvious from the trend, and others I think take a little bit more brain power. So
yikes.
Since we are more like an educational episode of getting people, you know, more familiar with what this conversation is, get the insights to our head, let's go ahead and start your way. I'm going to name the trend.
I think you should be wearing like an Avril Lavigne tie for this.
Oh, okay. Well, so this is movies.
I know, but
not music videos.
I'm just saying, like, maybe you're kind of a trend bitch.
Or like, what was it, the arm fishnets from the 80s that Madonna brought into play? The big bracelets.
Rubber bracelets.
Exactly. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right into it. I got 14 trends and then a few that I threw on the list to see that if you can catch them.
Okay.
So we're going to start with number one. If I was to say that a film increased the sale of a certain candy by 65%, if the candy wasn't named, do you think you could guess the film? And then maybe I'll say the candy next, and you can figure out what film it is after that, because it's pretty easy. So with the release of this film, a candy went up 65% in sales. And I'll give you a hint, 1980s.
Oh, man.
All right, so I'm going to give you the candy, and you'll get it right away, and you're going to kick yourself in the nuts.
No, give me 10 more seconds. Okay, I'm thinking like E.T. What am I thinking of?
You're correct. Reese's Pieces went up in sales by 65% in the month after the film's release. It was Hershey's best year in 17 years. This one should be really easy. This mask became the most popular mask for 4 years after the release of this film. I will give you the decade. It was the 2000s, and a mask used in a movie became the most popular mask for Halloween for 4 years.
I guess just Scream?
Close, but no, that's 1990s. This is 2000s.
I mean, I'm trying to think, like, it wouldn't have been Jigsaw, like...
Nope. The mask was the Guy Fawkes mask.
Ah, shit.
V for Vendetta, 2005.
Okay, I'll give you that one.
This is fun. That's what I said. If I named the movie, you'd get it right away.
I mean, you're right that it was gettable.
Right. It was absolutely gettable. This one is going to be more
I
challenging.
wish it had been a better movie to have a trend.
Well, this is true. And I think that 20 years on, it's very forgettable. I don't think a lot of people know that movie just based off The Mask unless we were from that decade. Newer kids don't know that mask. But Scream is still relevant. Like the Scream mask,
Sure.
because there's a Scream movie every few years
Right.
now. All right. So how about this? Etch-a-Sketch sales increased 60% after the release of this animated film in 1999.
I'm trying to I'm picturing a movie where somebody does like a masterpiece on an Etch-a-Sketch or something.
So the film is Toy Story 2, 1999. It introduced Etch-a-Sketch to a whole new generation of kids who didn't grow up with one because it kind of stopped in the 90s because Game Boys and shit came out.
I wonder if mine still exists.
I mean, I broke mine one time. Didn't we watch something where a guy made a bomb out of one? I forget what shit. Was that Breaking Bad?
Breaking Bad, he
That's right.
made he
Thermite.
makes thermite out of Etch-a-Sketches.
And then sales increased 65% after that.
Perfect.
Okay, this one is going to be pretty easy because it has two. This is a twofer. I'm going to give you the decade. 1980s. After the release of this film, aviator sunglass sales went up by 65%.
I mean, Top Gun's an easy one. It actually did more than that because I know more than one person who joined the Air Force after Top Gun.
So that's the second trend of this movie, is that recruiters say that estimated 90% of new applicants from the years 1987 to 1989 cited Top Gun as the main reason why they joined the Air Force.
Like I know a guy who's still a pilot
because of Top Gun.
because of Top Gun, and like this was my brother's friend,
Right.
age range wise, and like my brother I think was interested in it too. Like I'm gonna go be Tom Cruise.
I knew a guy in the company I worked for who he was a GM and his whole office was Top Gun, and he would watch Top Gun on his laptop during, business hours. And when Maverick came out, he'd go see it across the street during business hours and got fired because of it, because he wasn't in the building when emergencies happened because he was seeing Top Gun Maverick for like the seventh time.
Tom Cruise shouldn't have been a fighter pilot. He should have been a jockey.
Oh, there you go. He and Dustin Hoffman. All right, I got an easy one for you. 2003. This car, practically unavailable and unpopular in the United States, saw a 2,000% increase in sales in the 2 years after the film's release. 2003, unpopular car became extremely popular in the 2 years after this film's release.
So I mean, it had to have been popular.
It was not a car that was even popular in the States at the time. It is not a native car to the United States.
Not a native car to the United States.
Again, you're going to kick yourself in the nuts when I tell you this. The car is the Mini Cooper.
Oh shit!
And the film was The Italian Job.
Italian Job.
And that's the funny thing about that, is that
Weren't those like kind of blowing up right then?
right around that time they were introduced, but a lot of people say that the movie was made to help capitalize the fact that they were now available in this new model in the United States, and it really kicked it off. This kind of goes into the trend of some of the mills that we're talking about, where it's like, was the film as popular as the trend that it created? And I feel in this one, yeah, it's a good movie. We're not talking about The Italian Job today.
I disagree with this one. I feel like they threw a trendy car in the movie. Like that's how it fit in the movie, was this trendy little car got pulled into the movie. So I disagree with this one even making it on the list.
Except that the original with Michael Caine did feature the Mini Cooper prominently because it was small and it was compact and they could drive through all the different streets in Italy. So it was a remake, and I think they just capitalized on the serendipity of this car coming out and being able to use it to market, which I think is hilarious because Ed Norton is in the film.
Are you implying that the movie getting made in the first place like intentionally coincided with this car happening?
Yeah. Why not? I feel like that's how markets and corporations work, right?
I mean, I would buy that is a thing. It'd be interesting to research and see if we can actually find something on
it.
It
Would be, because I am kind of talking.
Or if somebody knows something.
I'm talking out of my ass, but it makes sense to me because we've seen crazy shit like that happen. cell phones. I mean, the movie with the wizard essentially is a giant commercial for the Power Glove and Super Mario Brothers 3, right? So it's kind of the same deal.
Love Power Glove.
The Power Glove. It's so bad.
So bad.
I laugh at this because just a few years earlier, they intentionally made fun of a newly released retro car in Fight Club. Ed Norton and Brad Pitt beat the shit out of a brand new Volkswagen Bug. And now a few years later, they're featuring a car that now becomes like a popular car for like the next 5 years. What's funny is I don't see Mini Coopers on the road at all anymore. I'm not even sure if they still sell them. I bet they do. But that fame is kind of decreased in the last decade.
So those are all falling apart right now where they're all going to be toast with their engine, and they're made by
BMW,
I think. And suddenly they're so expensive to try to
repair.
So people who know what they're doing are getting out of them, or have been the last few years.
It's funny because I've seen them all over Marketplace lately, and I never really made that connection.
It's people
That's
going,
why.
"Oh, I need to get out of this car real quick."
This kind of adds to my point is that BMW gave them 32 Mini Coopers for free just to demolish during filming.
See, that's where you go, okay, there is a connection. They are advertising the car in there. But again, did it have something to do with the movie getting made?
Right.
That's the question, I guess.
Like, it's already in the script, and they're just like, oh, well, this is a great opportunity to actually get this movie greenlit and moved forward because this is like the car of the 2010s, which I never wanted one.
Yeah, I mean, that whole funky bunch, they look good driving those in that movie.
Okay, so this one you kind of have to be an Avengers nerd, like a Marvel nerd to get. So I kind of give you a little bit of a hint right there. Shawarma sales increased in some areas of New York City after a post-credit scene in what movie?
I mean, obviously that was from Avengers, but that's just...
It's coincidental because that was an improv line by Robert Downey Jr., and I don't think a lot of people knew what shawarma was. And so after that post-credit scene of them eating it in like a little Mediterranean joint in New York City, all of a sudden people started looking at shawarma. And I remember in like the 10 years after that, even now, shawarma trucks are all over this city, like at the food fairs and at the farmers markets. And I knew what shawarma was, but it was nothing that I even cared about until after I saw that movie. I was like, I wonder if like that's something we have in Utah. It is now.
I mean, it would have, if anything, it would have been a food truck kind of thing. Like places that have more variety of ethnic stuff would have something like that.
Okay.
Okay, why was Chris Evans covering his face in that scene?
Oh yeah, because he had grown a beard for Snowpiercer. I knew that. And I'm not a Marvel nerd either.
He doesn't eat shawarma in Snowpiercer.
No, he eats babies.
He eats babies.
And cockroach meal. All right, so this one you're going to get pretty easily because it was the film that kind of sparked off this conversation. This particular wine sales increased by 40% in the year after the release of this movie. What was the wine and what was the movie?
I mean, the wine I would assume would be Pinot, and you're talking about Sideways.
Yes, and which wine, bonus question, decreased in sales by 30% because of the same movie?
We're not drinking Merlot.
I'm not drinking fucking Merlot. A movie literally changed the most popular red wine in the country to one of the least popular and increased, another wine way above it. A movie did that. I fucking love when that happens.
Not if you're in the Merlot business, but...
Well, I mean, vineyards are vineyards, right? I don't know. I know nothing about growing grapes and making wine.
You just need to go watch his speech about the grape that they use for Pinot, and you'll learn yourself something.
We're going a little bit older here, but I think you're going to get it. The sale of Vespa scooter increased significantly in the United States after the release of this 1950s romantic comedy.
That would be Roman Holiday.
Ooh, you're so good at that. Absolutely.
Well, she's my favorite.
Right. Gregory Peck's your favorite too.
That's who I meant.
Okay, so how about this one? This is a good one because I think this might be one of the longest running ones. So, this particular model of sunglass, known for its thick black frames, first went into market in 1952, but did not become popular until this 1980s film. What is the film and what is the style of sunglass?
I mean, you already talked about aviators with Top Gun.
Right? So I thought you might go with that one, but I've already mentioned it and it's not that.
So I think we're going to have to go with Risky Business.
Risky Business, the film, and what is the style of sunglass?
I mean, they just call them Ray-Bans?
It's the Ray-Ban Wayfarer specifically.
Ray-Ban Wayfarers. Okay.
So there you go. Tom Cruise helped significantly increase the sales of two types of sunglasses in the 1980s.
In like a 3-4 year period.
Right. I mean, he should still be doing that. Oh, he's got Scientology now, so he doesn't need to push anything else. Okay, this one's a weird one. This one's a very random one. The rentals of budget trucks increased significantly after the release of this 1990 comedy. Up to that point, U-Haul was the most popular, but for this decade, this company of budget rental trucks increased after the release of what 1990 comedy?
Was it Home Alone?
Home Alone. You got
How
it.
the hell is
That's
that
so
a trend?
And how is that traceable?
Like, how does my brain know that they rented a budget truck in Home Alone? Yeah, that's the only rental truck I can even pin down.
In a movie, like normally they don't have brands of rental trucks in films.
Oh, that movie liked brands. I'm sure they got a check for that.
Absolutely. Okay, so this one's an easy one for us 80s babies. What film popularized the off-the-shoulder sweatshirt?
I mean, is this Weird Science or no? Off the shoulder sweatshirt.
Off-the-shoulder sweatshirt. I'll give you a hint. There's a lot of welding involved.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I mean, if you had a thing, I'd pull it. Would that be a
Like Deadpool 2?
yeah, Deadpool. Really? So
Flashdance is
I mean, I get
essentially
that.
known for popularizing the off-the-shoulder sweatshirt style
okay.
and female welding.
And female welding.
Yeah.
Okay.
The female welders increased significantly. I know. Okay, this one's stupid. I hate this one. Speeding tickets rose after the release of this 2001 action drama,
Like Fast and Furious.
Fast and the Furious. I think it's a really stupid.
Like people just street racing.
Well, I think maybe like people started just feeling more comfortable street racing or getting into it. That kind of really does speak to what we were originally talking about. It's like trends that we saw increase after movies. Because remember,
I mean, that one makes sense. Like douchebag street racing.
I did not see those cars on streets until after that movie came out.
Did the death of Paul Walker knock it down?
Well,
I'm really asking.
here's the thing. They stopped street racing after like what, part 3? And it became like these international espionage guys.
You think I've seen past the second movie, you're out of your mind. But you, Mr. Fast and Furious fan, you please tell me how it works.
I've seen 3+1. I can't remember which one I saw. It's the one that they did the CGI face on Paul Walker with.
All right, I need you sleuths to look around this room and tell me if he's got all these movies.
I do not have a single Fast and the Furious movie in my collection.
All right, we're gonna leave it to Reddit.
I do have Gone in 60 Seconds with Nicolas Cage, though.
That's all right, because
Angelina Jolie is hot.
Angelina Jolie was firing.
So was Robert Duvall. All right. Pretty easy. This particular handgun became the most popular handgun in the country after the release of this 1975 movie.
I mean, Dirty Harry is obviously what you're talking about, which is a terrible gun to popularize because this is a 44 mag.
The most powerful handgun in the world. Could
And I
blow your
get
head
it, but
clean off. This particular breed of dog was the most abandoned breed of dog after the release of this animated film from the 1960s.
Dalmatian?
Dalmatians.
Dalmatians are awful.
The film popularized the breed of dog, which is not good for families.
Like they bite.
They bite, they're violent, they're skittish, they destroy things. And it was the most abandoned dog for the decade because of the release of that movie.
Wow.
To this day, it's like I barely see a Dalmatian. Whether it's,
I've known 2 people that had Dalmatians my whole life.
I know
and-
one guy and then Sublime. Like that's it for Dalmatians.
But I mean, the first people I knew that had Dalmatians when I was a teenager, their dogs were awful. Like you had to stay away from them because they were just so snappy.
Now, how about this? How about the films that we were discussing where not only did it popularize a trend, maybe it was a trend that already existed, but the film gave people recognition of what that trend was and increased its popularity. So I think the one that really has to like be spoken about, because it did and still does kind of hold true, is a film that introduced a style of poker to people that didn't even really know what that style of poker was.
I mean, obviously we're talking about rounders.
Right.
So not only did it blow up, I mean, it helped really blow up Texas Hold'em, but I mean, it helped it blow it up for me, at least watching it. Because what year did rounders come out?
I was like 97 or 98.
97, 98. So, I mean, it upticked from there, but then I can remember 2000, 2001, I was working as a bartender where there was just ESPN on next to me all day, every day at work in the afternoon in this slow bar of my restaurant. And I watched every minute of World Series of Poker for a few years and watched it blow up financially.
Like we'd play 5-card draw or 5-card stud. Like that's the only poker I ever learned.
We didn't know Hold'em.
I had no idea what Hold'em was until I saw rounders.
I'd seen World Series of Poker.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't mean I actually knew what I was looking at. So a movie that just explained it a little bit and explained why this was the big deal one about going all in, and, you know, just explaining how that worked really helped popularize poker. I mean, it really did.
Well, and not only that, it's like, it's interesting to me that like the film still wasn't like a big moneymaker. It wasn't like a blockbuster movie, but it's like one of those movies like Boondock Saints where like college dorm guys really had like a thing for this movie. And then it started creating like these little, you know, backroom poker games and stuff like that. They even talk about it in Ocean's 11, where Brad Pitt is teaching celebrities how to play Texas Hold'em. You know, it kind of goes along with that trend of the 2000s.
Timing wise, with also what blew up poker, I think rounders absolutely helped it. But just a few years later, as World Series of Poker kind of peaked, early 2000s, I mean, the internet had blown up in a real significant way right then, and there was online poker in a way that they hadn't been just a few years before that, just based on technology. So I think those kind of coincided, and the movie helped, the internet definitely helped, and then, you know, somebody like Chris Moneymaker winning World Series of Poker, who was just an amateur dude who made it to the $1 million+ jackpot at the end, essentially. And then, you know, a year or two later, it was this dude, Jamie Gold. Right. It was like $10-11 million. So, I mean, it blew up.
And you started seeing casinos actually make room for poker tables and make poker rooms. And like,
I mean, it's still a big deal.
It's still a big deal. Like that one really kind of hasn't gone away. We haven't seen anything for like darts or bowling yet, like from Kingpin, but
I don't think Kingpin started a bowling trend, but
right.
Still a great movie.
Still a great movie. Okay, how about this one? You might get this one. 1977. This film popularized women wearing baggy trousers and neckties. So obviously it's not Avril Lavigne. 1977, popularizing baggy trousers and neckties. I will give you another hint. The writer-director is a very polarizing and controversial character in these modern times.
I mean, are you talking about Polanski?
Nope. Time's up. 1977, the film was Annie Hall, directed and written by Woody Allen. That did popularize women wearing baggy trousers and neckties. It doesn't say vests, but she wears a vest throughout the whole movie as well. So it's before our time, but I think I would have gotten that one.
So here's where I struggle with her. Is the way I got to know her as an actress was from an 80s movie that she starred in.
Oh God, I know exactly what movie you're going to talk about.
All right, go ahead, please.
You're talking about Baby Boom.
which it's made me erase her from my brain for 40 years.
Even though she's in The Godfathers,
Sure. Yeah.
Baby Boom's enough to kill an actress's career.
She's in Baby Boom, and then she's annoying in Godfather 3. Like, I don't need you anymore.
We're done. We're done with Kay's story. That's hilarious.
Annie Hall's just not a movie I rewatch. You know, I've probably seen it twice ever, and it's fine. Like I like occasionally mixing a movie with dialogue like that.
Mm-hmm. This horror film from the late 1960s popularized the pixie haircut on women.
Okay, definitely Psycho. No, not Psycho.
Not Psycho. The pixie cut was on Mia Farrow, and the film was Rosemary's Baby. That's a good one.
No, here's what I was thinking of is, doesn't she change her hair at the beginning of Psycho when she runs away?
Unfortunately, I think you're thinking about Anne Heche's portrayal of Marion Crane in Psycho because she's got a little pixie cut and you can see her butthole.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah, they didn't have Norman Bates fapping in the first one.
No, they didn't. This shoe became popularized after it was featured in this early 1980s comedy. The shoe is the black and white checkered van. What is the movie and who wears the shoe? The actor is Sean Penn, and the film is Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Jeff Spicoli. Okay, so this film from 1997 is known to have popularized the goth culture in teenage girls. What is the film?
Definitely The Craft.
The Craft. It's a good one.
Which they're remaking.
No, they already remade it. You missed it. It was like 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was during COVID that it came out.
Sure, it was good. Oh, and then the other one they're remaking with the goth stuff right now is
The Crow, which they're not making goth. How can you make The Crow not goth? If anything, he looks almost like what is not reggaeton, but he looks like that South African rap group, Die Antwoord.
It hasn't come out yet. Like, just giving away our timeline right now. That movie's about to come out.
It's true.
It looks terrible.
It looks terrible. This film from the early 2000s inadvertently caused extinction in a local fish from Thailand popularized as pets in the United States.
Start over.
This early 2000s animated film caused the extinction of a fish in Thailand that was popularized as a pet in the United States.
Like Nemo? Are we talking clownfish?
Finding Nemo. The clownfish population dropped in Thailand by 40% due to overbreeding and overselling to the United States because of the release of the 2003 animated film.
Wow.
So we got like another 101 Dalmatians thing going on.
I didn't know that was a thing.
So this is TV, but I think it's interesting. 2017 saw the biggest sales increase of the decade in this popular breakfast pastry. What was the show and what was the pastry?
2017?
2017. Breakfast pastry and what was the show? And I'm giving you a hint, it's not Pop-Tarts.
2017 uptick in...
So the show was Stranger Things. The breakfast pastry was Eggo frozen waffles. Saw a sales increase of 24%, the highest increase of the decade after the release of the show.
Wow. Sure, I'll buy that one.
Okay, how about this one? This film made a very unpopular car at the time so popular that its auction price went over 100% in the decade following. What was the car and what was the film? 1982 was when the car went out of production.
So we're just talking about the DeLorean.
The DeLorean from Back to the Future, which by all accounts is a terrible car. But people didn't care that it was a terrible car to drive. They wanted it because it was the time machine.
I mean, DeLoreans were cool. And
well, they were cool, but like as cars, they weren't great.
No, the company just was a failure because it was kind of a... I don't know if you know DeLorean story.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I do.
But that was just a one-off thing that had cool doors.
Here's a trick for you. Do you know why they made it DeLorean and what it originally was and why they had to change it from what it was to the DeLorean?
I don't know this story.
So the original script, it was a refrigerator that they would go into. And the studio made them change it because they were afraid that kids would lock themselves in refrigerators and kill themselves.
Somehow we've talked about that.
I think
episode of
so.
Punky
I
Brewster
think
on here
we
before.
have. And then they had to change it to something else. And that's when they decided to turn it into a sports car. And really, they were looking for the most ironic thing to make a time machine out of. That's why they chose the DeLorean. And it did the opposite. It actually popularized the vehicle.
So I've got to tell my one DeLorean story.
Please do.
For a big event, we had built we made a bunch of movie spoofs as an introduction for this big stage event in a convention center kind of thing. And one of the spoofs, the one that it ended with, was a Back to the Future spoof.
Mm-hmm.
We'd even tried to get Chris Lloyd and stuff, and we didn't have the budget. Microsoft
Is he busy?
Microsoft had just done one, and I'm sure they wrote him a big fat check. And either way, we reached out, and he was like, "I'm good." Like, even if we could have written the check, he was like, "No, I'm good. Thanks. No Doc Brown today." But so I had the owners of this company reveal they come out in a DeLorean onto the stage. So they roll out in a DeLorean, and then they come out, and that's the way they got introduced to the event. Well, this nice 60-year-old lady that I had get out of this car, she gets out and like jumps up like excited and just slams her head onto this door.
Oh God, the gull wing door.
And I'm right there. Like, I've helped put on this production. I'm right there with a camera, like just off, like 6 feet behind her, watching this happen. I'm mortified. So now she just holding her head, like hobbles on to the front of the stage for this big blow up introduction. That's my whole DeLorean story. So I paid bucks to have a DeLorean brought in and everything, and ended up smashing up somebody's head by having the stupid thing.
I think it's a hilarious story, personally. I wish I would have been there.
Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, how about this? This 1953 motorcycle movie is known to be responsible for creating the so-called leather daddy movement that still goes on today. What was the 1953 film, and who was its star?
We're talking about James Dean? Like, no, that's not the right timing.
You're close. You're closer than you think. I had a James Dean question.
Or is this Brando?
This is Brando, the Wild One,
Wild One,
1953.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, that makes sense.
It was the first film to really popularize the idea of a motorcycle club and the leather daddy movement, as he was wearing all black leather and the little leather daddy hat. Didn't seem gay in 1953, but whew, I think the Village People fixed that for us.
Turn the camera around. Show them your closet right here.
Oh, yeah, well, I don't want the closet. So did I leave any out, do you think? Like, are there any that weren't on this list that you can think of? I mean, there's a very obvious one that wasn't on this list, but we kind of talked about it before.
This one is too obvious. This movie popularized disco. I mean, that's...
And polyester suits.
Saturday Night Fever. What's something else? I don't know. What do you got?
I mean, so like we did talk about Rounders. I mentioned The Matrix at the beginning, how that kind of did start a little bit of a movement. Saturday Night Fever, if you're going to talk about that, you kind of have to talk about Urban Cowboy, how it did like popularize cowboy get up and culture a little bit. It was kind of before our time, and I think that was more like New York and Los Angeles. We already have cowboys here in Utah, so it didn't like Urban Cowboy is just the thing for us.
I don't know about that one. But also we weren't in a position to see that kind of cultural change if there was one.
I was thinking that maybe the movie Chef with Jon Favreau maybe did kind of popularize the idea of not just food trucks, but like the social marketing of food trucks. Because when I went to school in Portland for culinary, we had food trucks and carts, but the idea of following a food truck through social media and through Twitter and kind of have building that fan base, maybe that was like an LA thing, but I saw a lot more of it in the years following that, which kind of reminds me of Rounders, where like the film wasn't a huge hit, but I do feel like it did kind of popularize something that was burgeoning at the time. And that was like the social marketing of your own little food truck, your own little business, And now we have diners, dive-ins, and drives, and food truck wars and things like that. But we didn't really see a lot of that before 2014.
So I've got one. Were there many people dressing like hippies, do you think, in the 80s? I would guess no, not really.
If you saw them in a film, it was done like ironically.
So I really think that Dazed and Confused got junior high, high school girls dressing like hippies that had not been that in the 80s, that had been that in the 70s. Like, I feel like...
No, for sure.
I totally think that affected the way girls dressed.
And like the advent of jam bands like Fish coming out around the same time, and seeing that kind of like, it's almost as if, let's say their parents were deadheads, right? And they kind of found their stuff in the closet, and now it kind of fits in with this new identity that they've clung to.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Is like they are wearing their mom's pants.
You want to hear something that's kind of fucked up?
Please.
Is that in 1993, compared to when Dazed and Confused was supposed to have taken place, for us, that would be the nostalgia factor of 2007. Not much has changed from 2007 till now, with the exception that maybe we did lose the Avril Lavigne tie, but it's really hard to like look at huge cultural swings other than political ones, which whatever, that comes and goes. But I mean, like, we still have iPhones, they're just better. We still have Macs and shit, they're
we
just
didn't have
better.
that quite yet. We were close.
Right.
We didn't have iPhones yet, almost.
No, 2007 is when the iPhone, in 2008, yeah.
Oh, wait, yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like, because 70s obviously had some of their unique styles.
Right.
The hippies, disco, like some very unique things. 80s, we already talked about some of that. The, you had the butt rock, you had the rubber bracelet, Madonna stuff. You had new wave, like a bunch of different styles.
It goes back to, I'm not going to say it's like a Mandela thing.
You wore a clock.
The Flavor Flav. I'm not going to say it's like a Mandela effect thing, or that it is some kind of, I don't know, psyop, but I've always been fascinated with the idea that like, until I'm going to say 2010, the decades changed so much culturally and what was popular stylistically and cinema. I mean, every decade, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, up until like the early 2000s, each decade had a swing, and it was a technological swing and a cultural swing. Fashion changed, music changed, movies changed, sexuality on TV and in music changed. Video games getting ratings, music getting ratings, not being carried in Walmart. And then all of a sudden, once all of that analog technology gets erased because now we're in a digital world, I feel nothing has changed progressively. We just can fit more onto a device, but we're not seeing anything new. Like, the tangible stuff has gone away. And now I think fashion in people is more of just like a interpersonal reflection of what they wish they were. It's not as much cultural. If anything, everyone's kind of trying to be different now, where all the decades before, if there was a trend, you would jump on it. But now there's just so many trends that no one wants to like be a part of that movement.
I think, I don't want to offend any of your listeners that are shitting in a litter box in their kitchen, or,
whatever it is.
There's some stuff going on right now. There's
right.
people being
weird,
different. I can't say it's, they all like to get on the bandwagon with stuff, but I can't say it's not cultural changes that people are going to be looking back on fondly 20 years from now, 17 years from now.
You never know, though.
Put some money on that one. We'll seal an envelope somewhere.
I'm going to be dead by then. Trust me. Like, we're all going to be dead. The bomb is going to drop, or we're going to have like a Snowpiercer situation, or cordyceps zombies. I don't know. Something's happening.
We're going to know what babies taste like.
We're gonna know what babies taste like. This is my theory, and I'm just talking at my ass, right? But I think because people are now so distracted by social media and devices that they aren't looking around them as much as they used to, and envying or wanting to emulate what they see around them at arm's length. They're looking at what is on their little screen, And that seems a lot more accessible and tangible. And because there's so much more of it, it doesn't matter what their social group is doing because social groups don't really matter anymore.
Right. They can find community
anywhere
on their
all
Xbox
over the
headset.
world. Exactly,
Right.
exactly. Where it started in schools for us, like with trends. Like, okay, Jenny's wearing a Guess jeans. Now I want Guess jeans.
You and your pogs.
I didn't have pogs.
Your
Me and my ska music
says-
from 1996.
Your face
How
has
about that?
pogs all over it.
I don't think I ever owned a pog. Really,
Anyone who's like a minute younger than us doesn't know what pogs are.
Right. Pokemon killed it essentially.
Right.
But that's my whole thing is that like in the analog days, and we kind of are like the last generation to really experience that, where tangible things were like things of envy. And they were like, just like High Fidelity says, that collecting vinyl is like a fetish culture.
I mean, we were working in and with video as it changed from analog
to digital.
And then that transition where it changed from digital tape to just
hard
digital,
drives.
just
It's just
digital.
it doesn't exist in a tangible form.
So it's like digital tape was still felt kind of analog because you had to do all the analog bullshit.
Right.
And we worked through very physically seeing all of that change.
You don't see as many trends started from films, at least fashion trends started from films and TV as much as you used to, because it's so capitalized. I think the interesting ones that we talked about in this were things like increases of sales of Eggos or wine or cars.
I mean, there's still stuff that pops up, like Stranger Things, for example. We could talk about, there's a more recent thing, chess had a big uptick from Queen's Gambit.
That was on there. I didn't say it because it was a TV show and we're kind of talking about movies, but still, like, yeah, 100%.
So that stuff still happens, good or bad. You got big into the acapella singing and stuff when What's It Called came out.
Yeah, Pitch Perfect. I tried to start my own group.
Perfect. Yeah.
Didn't pull through.
You guys you'll circle back to that, I'm sure.
I want to bring back barbershop quartets, but I don't think the world's ready for it yet. But anyway, so yeah, it's an interesting conversation. And this is the kind of stuff that we end up just usually talking about when we're drinking and talking bullshit. But it was a really interesting idea when you brought it up. It's like the biggest thing that I saw in the list that we covered was almost all of the biggest trends that we talked about were from films from the 80s. So my question to you is, do you think that the 80s were the most influential decade when it came to music, TV, and movies of how people lived their lives and bought shit? Like, if we're talking about the capitalistic and marketing aspect of movies creating trends and cultural changes, the 80s seem to be, for me, the one that did it the most.
I think it's just the access and all those kinds of things. I think, over the decades as TV and movies became more popular and people were turning more and more into either couch potatoes or at the same time you had the uptick of things like shopping malls.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like those things converged to make those trendy things happen. Shopping mall, TV, and movies all combined into big trends happening.
And then, like, when the 90s happened and the grunge movement came and, like, Nirvana, Kurt Cobain and stuff like that, the whole idea was to, like, tear the labels off your jeans and cut that shit off. But then just a few years later, that became a popular trend. And you started seeing girls who'd never heard a Nirvana song in their life wearing a Kurt Cobain t-shirt. Or my favorite, the Misfit Skull t-shirt, and they don't even know what it means.
So there's still always
Hot Topic.
There's still always going to be trendy stuff like that, and it is going to be driven by, like stupid things like Hot Topic, right? But I think I just nailed that, and they capitalized on that with Stranger Things, like they vibed into all of that kind of stuff,
dude,
and it actually made it a trendy show,
dude. Stranger Things brought Kate Bush back into the limelight. Just that one song played several times in the last season of Stranger Things revitalized that woman's career after like 25 years. So yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, there are things like that where if you have a cultural iconic show like Stranger Things and it can bring back someone's career because of a song.
But
It's pretty fucking cool.
bringing her up makes me think of Norm Macdonald. And I don't remember if he did this bit or if he was just talking about this is a bit he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like, this was a SNL bit where it's like a game show. And he's going, this artist had 13 Grammys over a 7-year period and has multiple hits and blah, 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 blah. Name 2.
Yeah, it's
And you're just like, oh.
Oh, yeah.
So you're right. I mean, somebody who can get forgotten, and he was joking about how forgotten somebody can be real quick.
So I want to ask you a question because I want to see if you're on the same wavelength as me. I think that a film came out this year that has revitalized a song that a lot of people forgot about, and it's like one of my favorite things of 2024. Do you know what I'm thinking about?
I don't know.
I think that Deadpool Wolverine using Like a Prayer doing one of the most violent things I've ever seen in cinema was just an absolute banger, and I'm hearing it all over the radio.
It's so funny how that happens. I mean, we talked about this on a recent episode with Bohemian Rhapsody, how it blew up so big
because of
in
Wayne's
the
World.
early 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, it was suddenly all over the radio. And it was something you'd heard here and there growing up because it's such a long song and such a weird one. But during the 80s, I wouldn't say it got a ton of play.
No.
Even, Queen was still getting a ton of play.
Right.
Like, they were huge. One of the biggest bands in the world. But not that song.
No. Like I remember in the 80s, if I remembered a Queen song, it was Another One Bites the Dust or We Are the Champions. Like, they were still playing that shit.
Sure.
It was still early 80s. But yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Night of the Opera was one of their more like obscure concept albums. And after Wayne's World, it became like their best known album.
Songs blowing up definitely is a thing. And I mean, that's another thing that we could talk about is just associating songs with movies and how they blew up a song. But
right.
I don't think we can do that.
I did find some disappointment in the fact that they did repopularize NSYNC though. In Deadpool Wolverine, but I digress.
Gotcha. I mean, they'd already gone that route with Backstreet Boys in This Is the End.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah. So this was a good conversation. I love stuff like this. We don't do episodes like this that often, but we should because this is the kind of stuff that, like I said, this is bullshit that we talk about when we're drinking, you're just hanging out. But there's a lot more to it where you don't think about, like, oh my God, like how often did movies, music, and television change things culturally? And sometimes those changes last forever.
I mean, music is a big one for
Right.
that. It's like it could be a song. It's different when the movie is tied on some new song. Like, for example, Top Gun.
Mhm.
Your boy Kenny Loggins.
Mhm.
That's not the same thing, I don't think, as when something like, for example, Pulp Fiction and or Reservoir Dogs.
Right.
Reservoir Dogs is a bigger example where
forever people are going to associate a song with a scene.
right,
Right.
and that movie even more than one.
Correct.
Which is interesting. So,
yeah, no, for sure.
Or Kill Bill, or all sorts of things where it's cool when it's an old song,
Right.
not when it's a song for the movie.
Right. I think the one that really just sticks in my head is the Freebird fight scene from Kingsman.
Sure.
I will forever now associate Freebird with Colin Firth shooting people in a church through Bibles and stabbing them with crucifixes. Brilliant.
Great scene. All right.
All right, we're done here. So anyway, let's think about future conversations like this, where if it's a pop culture thing or if it's something that maybe it's in reverse, where a trend created a movie. I think that would be a fun conversation too, because we have seen that successful and non-successful of something that happens that Hollywood's like, well, let's popularize this. By the time it happens, the trend is over, and then you just fucked yourself with a $40 million movie that nobody cares about. All right, well, everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, review, rate, 5 stars, all that good stuff on YouTube and your favorite listening platform. Please check out my blog and all of my Cultworthy partners on thecultworthy.com. And Steven, I will see you later.
Thanks.